for 25
They are
years.
the family. I think someone comes from Virginia.
Oh, I
That's
did
where
hear
he's from.
about, yeah. But she said she had known Reese for 20-something years.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Mm-mm.
His daughters and granddaughters
Mm-hmm.
were having a hard time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
They really were. At first, they looked like they were doing pretty good and everything, but
Yeah.
they were having a hard time. It was sad. But
She
when,
waved at me and that's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I did talk to her towards the end when I had heard Reese say who they were, so I did talk to them. But
Oh, that's good.
it confused me when they said the viewing instead of visitation.
I didn't know what it was either.
I didn't realize he was cremated.
I didn't know either.
When it said viewing,
Somebody said that they'd seen an urn maybe.
it was an urn up there, plain as day. Had a couple pictures and,
I've seen a lot of pictures. I didn't know what.
maybe a flower, but it was
Mm-hmm.
kind of old timey vase. I liked it.
Mhm.
Kind of metally looking in a way, and maybe
I didn't know.
Chinese looking a bit. My
I didn't know
grandmother
what was
had
going
some,
on either, so.
but when they said that, I was confused.
Hi there.
Oh, you have a flashlight.
Oh, you don't know
We
what
didn't
it
have
is?
no lights out front tonight.
Uh,
So we didn't have them lights out front tonight.
I know it, I had to bring my little flashlight. My son gave me a flashlight to go in my purse.
Well,
It's come in handy
Good
already.
to see you.
it always comes in handy.
Good to be here. The Hallabell Expressway is busy tonight.
Oh, yeah. That's why I'm surprised to come out.
That's about the truth. So you feeling okay?
I feel better today than I felt, yeah, I had a bad day yesterday.
Did you?
Yeah.
Maybe it was just the change in the weather too. It made
Yeah,
my bones hurt.
yeah, I got, my bones hurt so
I
bad.
couldn't sleep.
I went out with some friends last night.
Color better.
Told them, I said, I laughed and we had a good
Up
time.
the freeway.
I got those endorphins going, and I said, well, that made it, and I took 2 Tylenol. Had to go to the supper.
Well, that's good.
And so I said, well, I'm gonna try it out tonight.
You're brave. I know that. You're brave.
Yeah, and I mean, the Savannah traffic's terrible this time of day.
We know.
It's getting lighter. I'm just staying lighter later, so
I'm just
I'm
starting
happy about that. I don't
Yeah,
know
I
how many got one in the dark. My street light went out. My house is so dark. I'm used to that street
I've had a
light.
big house guest for the last 2 days, and I have my house lit up at night with night lights and all that. And they turned all the night lights out, and I was like, why did you turn my night lights out? I was looking, old people just don't need to be in the house except when I have night lights. Hey,
Oh, your company gone, or?
yeah, they gone, they left today. Can you do with us? Yeah, I will do with y'all, okay.
Good to see
Oh,
you.
Lord, would you? Because then other people wouldn't.
It'll be cheap.
We have the extra room, but it's full of junk, we'll get rid of it.
Doing pretty good, I had a bad day yesterday, yeah.
It hit us all.
Yeah.
Mama, we had a real
You know where
bad
we
day
live at? We're at the 24/7. We're at where Walmart is now.
Yeah, and I had
Well,
somebody
that's
try to
true.
scam my checking account this morning.
You're kidding.
Yeah,
Well, why would you kid about something like that? But
I mean, just, I told him, I said,
You'll have it for several months.
Yeah, and I
Don't know why.
called it Amazon, well, somebody's trying to charge something to your
Yeah.
account in California, do you know anybody in California? I said, no. And, and he says, well, we want to settle this matter, we've already been in touch with your bank, that was my first red flag.
yeah,
And he says, well, which is the closest, to your house, CVS, or so he named off a couple more. I said, well, CVS, of course. He said, well, I want you to get, go right now. I said, I can't go right now. I said, I've still got my pajamas on. So I told him, then I told him, I said, well, you know, it's just such an urgent matter. I said, you need to talk to my power of attorney. No, we don't want to talk. We've already talked to your bank. Well, I knew that was not so. And so we finally, anyway, I got my, he said, well, you know, you don't have but such and such amount in your check. I said, that's not right. I said, I checked it yesterday. And for some reason, my internet and everything was all hosed up. So I had been working on it to do what I knew what to do, and I couldn't get it to come up, you know. And anyway, he kept on and on, so I went and called my son-in-law, who's my power of attorney, Michael, that was here. And so he has access to my accounts. I said, Michael, pull it up. And then the guy on there, he says, well, I've already added $2,000 back to your account. You know, and I said, companies just don't do that. And so I called him, I said, Michael, pull up my checking account and see what it was, what I had, the balance that I had seen yesterday. And I said, by the way, I said, is there a deposit for $2,000 that they told me that was going in there? He says, no, there hadn't been no deposits to, except your little retirement check you got. And so anyway, I said, well, and so poor Barry, I woke him up. He was down in the throes of sleep. And I said, come on, let's go. I said, I need to go to the bank and tell them about it, you know. And I had to see them anyway. And so we got out, and we've been out all afternoon getting stuff. So I went to Comcast to see if I could get them to come out and get my internet back up and check, you know, get the account changed in my name.
You have to do that in person, but I know.
I got a list of 25 things in a tablet that I've got to do whenever I get the death certificate.
Yeah, that's a bunch. That, then it becomes a huge big chore.
It's been a,
But we got up early. Take Taylor's 2 dogs to get neutered in Savannah on Abercorn. Then Donna had to go to the lab. We went on the end to do that. Well, actually down by Memorial to do that. Then we ate, stopped by to get totes at Lowe's. I got home just about in time for me to head to work for my half day that I took off this morning. Found out when I got there that I had a meeting, so I went in a meeting, told them off.
I know you were just broken up because you had to miss the meeting too, weren't you?
Actually, I went into the meeting, told them all off and left. Taught 2 groups of kids, came back home, picked up Donna. And Donna was headed to Savannah on foot. When I got here, we went and picked up the dogs. One of them whined the entire way home.
Just like a little child.
Put them in their fence, and that's the last I've seen of them. And I laid down for 45 minutes before I came over here. And that's been the day. And then the lady from the vet called me, and I said, y'all be quiet, I got to talk on the phone. These kids would not be quiet. I said, ma'am, you have to excuse me. And with her on the phone, I said, would you be quiet and show some manners? And the man said, well, I can call another time. I said, no, don't you worry. It's not your fault. It's theirs. I'm a teacher. These are 11th graders. They should be acting better. And I said, this concerns you too. I said, because you and I, because we have jobs, we supporting these children the rest of their lives because they haven't grown up by the time they're in the 11th grade.
Yeah.
That was the quietest group of kids the rest of the day that I ever have heard them be.
Well, you need to say stuff like that more often, Jeff.
And I said, how would you like me to take, when I got off the phone, I said, how would you like me to take up every one of your phones? I said, I always let them, if they have an emergency, even if I'm talking, they can answer a phone call, just step. I have a bathroom in my little trailer out there. They could step in the bathroom where there's plenty of service and call, just, let me continue to teach. And I always let them, I said, can I answer a text? It's my grandmother in the hospital. And I don't even try to find out if it's true. I just say, yeah, go ahead and answer it, push phone away. Now, I'm not going to be hateful about it. And I forward them up. And then I said, the very idea, me stepping off, and I could even see him. I said, the very idea, and just misbehaving, just because I'm not standing here in the same room. That's the reason I don't teach kindergarten. They, yeah,
They settled down.
they were quiet for about 4
Let
minutes.
people
I couldn't believe it. Every one of them was doing something else. I could look on their computer from my computer. And see what they're doing. They were all doing something else. I said, why aren't you doing your assignment? I said, well, we already finished it after you talked.
Well, I want to tell you, all Jimmy's daughters and his family and everything, they were so impressed with you. They
We were too.
wanted you to know how much they appreciated his sister even doing his services.
Oh, I appreciate that. I'm not even sure what I said, to be honest with you. I never am. But, people are always very appreciative, but honestly, that's some of the toughest things I do. Kentucky just did a number
But I
on
know
me.
Jimmy, he would have been very happy.
He left me far too soon. I had a whole lot more. I had a whole lot more to ask him and talk to him about. So he really did. I never thought that would happen. It just never occurred to me.
Yeah, I know it was Manny and the Lago that was staying with him yesterday morning. Something came up, and I'm going down the hall just calling Jimmy. Jimmy, and I said, I'm sorry, Manny. I said, I was calling Jimmy.
Was he there? You know?
Yeah, he was there.
I didn't know. I didn't notice.
Yeah,
Well, I had to get back to work too as soon as it was over.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, my brother and his wife, they put on a really good luncheon for us all, you know.
that was nice of him. I didn't know you were from Blackstone.
I didn't either.
Very good friend of mine lives there. He and his brother, Chris and Butch, Lawson.
Who was that?
Lawson.
I don't know.
They live on that double road, that divided road on the way to the Claxton High School football field out there,
Okay.
the concrete bowl.
Yeah, the guy.
It hadn't changed in probably 100 years.
Yeah, 100 years, that's the truth.
One of my kids kicked a ball in warm-ups. They went over the bleachers and into somebody's yard.
Oh, my.
And I had to climb a fence and go in the yard after that ball. And this big old dog back there that I had to keep an eye on. All right, Dad, would you do this word of prayer before we start?
Lord, most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this privilege we have to worship you. We ask, dear Heavenly Father, that you'll be with us. Help us to worship you in spirit and in truth. Be with those who are not here for whatever reason, dear Heavenly Father, you know. And help them to get in the right mindset in order to come and worship you with us. Be with the teacher, help him say those things that will encourage us in your service. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, now here's some, after Jesus is kind of angry at the scribes and Pharisees and things, then some really cool things happen. John backtracks a little bit because Herod at this time heard about Jesus in chapter 14. He said, this is John the Baptist. He himself had been raised from the dead. That's why miraculous powers are at work with him. And then he tells the story of John the Baptist, which is to me one of the most tragic things in the Bible. And it's tragic because John was such a mountain of a man, and so bigger than life, and he died for absolutely no reason. The silliest reason that you could have for an individual passing away. It's just if it hadn't caused John's death, this would be a very trivial story. I mean, it's a story of a man who messed up and spoke before he thought. Now, in verse 13, now when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard about this, they followed him on foot from the cities. When he came ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them and healed their sick. This is really affecting Jesus. Jesus absolutely loved John. He was very, very concerned about. He was very, very, he cared about him. John was just a man among men. And Jesus knew it. And Jesus recognized that. And he does not like the fact of John being put to death in his way, or at all. And so he goes to a secluded place. Well, the people heard about it and followed him on foot in the cities. They won't let the man be alone for just a little while. But he saw this large crowd, and he felt compassion for them and healed their sick. Now, in verse 15, this is a very well-known story. I want to point out a couple things about it. Now, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This place is secluded, and the hour is already past to eat. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "They do not need to go. You give them something to eat." They said to him, "We have nothing here except 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Bring them to here to me." And ordering the crowds to sit down in the grass, he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looked up toward heaven. He blessed the food, and breaking the loaves, he gave it to the disciples. The disciples gave it to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they picked up what was left over the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. And there were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. This is commonly called the healing of the 5,000. It should be called the healing of the 5,000 men, because we don't really know, the feeding of the 5,000. It should be called the feeding of the 5,000 men, because we don't know how many thousands of people actually ate. These people, they were usually, a Jewish man was usually married. If he was an adult, that was just considered, what you did. And they didn't stop at one child usually. They had many of them. And so this could be 5,000. This could be upwards of 20 to 25,000 people. However, this one and the one that is in the next paragraph, I want you to know a couple of things about this, or to look at 2 things about this. Let's just suppose that this was not done in this day, but was done today. There is a preacher, and he is feeding 5,000 men and women, and more men, women, and children, with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Think for a moment, how would this be done in modern day religion? Here is an obvious miracle. And from what I can see of miracles today, let's just assume that this was done today. What would happen? If this was going to take place today, how would it come about?
First, you'd have to get it organized.
Mm-hmm. You'd have to rent a field or something. Then the billboards would come. We were going to have 5 loaves, 2 fish. Everybody come. Many people come as possible.
Many come out of curiosity,
Mm-hmm. We could probably, even here in Ellaville, we could probably put together 5,000 men.
Yeah.
We could probably put together 5,000. If we did it well, if we marketed it well. But then the individual that was going to do this, how would he do it? You've seen miracles today, or at least what people claim to have. I'm talking about not the miracles that we see in the hospitals and things like that. I'm talking about miracles that the evangelists do. How would they do it? Well, usually with a band.
Yeah.
Spotlights.
Some kind of gimmick for you to come on down. Yelling and dancing.
Mm-hmm. Thunder, probably.
Yeah.
Lightning.
All kinds
Wind.
of colored lights.
And then it would magically happen, with maybe strobe lights or glitter or something.
Be a lot of cameras on.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and the media would be,
Yeah, invited and everybody.
miles away.
Well, everybody has a phone, so they'd all have it.
Like I said, you have a lot of curiosity seekers and a lot of people that who are hungry coming to that feast.
Well, honestly, that's probably, well, not the hungry part, but what else you said was probably here at Jesus's gathering too, curiosity seekers. Excuse me. After all, Jesus has been doing miracles. He's been healing sick people, while he's been there.
Yeah.
Here's the problem that I have personally with what people in religion tell me about miracles today. They're a show. They're a big deal today, and they're made a big deal. And in fact, the miracle is the thing. People come for that. Now, I know there's been cases of people hiring people. I ain't talking about any of that. But let's just assume they were actually real for a moment. They're not. I know that. But pretend. They're not the same miracles that Jesus did. They're not done in the same way. There's a show. There's a big deal. People are invited to come see miracles. Come see the sick healed. I've never seen anybody try to pull this off. Okay. But I will imagine if I keep saying it long enough, somebody will. Is it possible to do? Yeah, sleight of hand, all this kind of stuff. The problem I have with the televangelists is they want to do miracles. They're not near as good as the guys who claim not to be doing miracles, but claim to be doing illusions, like David Copperfield and Chris Angel. I'm going to talk about a showman. I actually saw Chris Angel live. I saw him saw a woman in half with a chainsaw. People say, well, that's been done before. He had no box. No box. She was laying across a piece of sheet metal, and he cut the sheet metal in two with a chainsaw, and she got up and she was fine. Didn't do it behind a curtain. Did it in front of everybody. How did he do it? I haven't the first idea how he did it, but he firmly said, this is not real. This is an illusion. And he said he wasn't going to tell you how he did it, but he said, this is an illusion. This is not real. He said that before every one of his tricks. Actually, he had I don't even know if he still had it, he had a Cirque du Soleil show, which is a show. If you've ever been to a show, he had a Cirque du Soleil show. And that was part of it. It's called Belief. And he was part of it. But what I'm saying is this. If you want to put on a show with a miracle, these guys know how to do it.
Yeah.
And they'll even say they're not. I have no problem with what they're doing. That's entertaining to me. I think it's wonderful. But the guys that claim to be doing it, they don't hold a candle to what these guys can do. And they have the same budget. The miracles that I've seen Jesus do, first of all, aren't done in a showy way. This is just, I don't want to say off the cuff. This is just done at the last minute. Jesus is probably talking to these people. We know he's discussing, he's healing them. But he only heals them because he felt compassion for them. See somebody who's sick and he heals them. And then, how does he feed all these people with this very small amount of food? He just simply, matter-of-factly, blesses it after he tells them to sit down, and then puts it into baskets and sends the disciples out among the people to give them whatever they want, filling up 12 baskets with the broken pieces that were left over.
Well, actually, it says he hands it to the disciples, so that always,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be in half, pieces,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but he hands the disciples
Mhm.
and it continues.
And people, there was so much that the part that people could not eat, which is a funny story about that, happened today. The part that people could not eat, 12 full baskets were picked up off the ground.
Well, they just witnessed the master at work.
Well, yes, I know the way you meant that, but I'm not sure it was work.
No, not for him.
You know,
I mean, it just.
the master doing what he,
Normally does as a master.
he was just living his daily life. Here's 5,000 people need to be fed. Oh, yeah. Okay.
No big deal.
Yeah, no sweat. You know, what is a huge,
Brow.
I should have actually brought that up. What is a huge catastrophe to the disciples? We don't have anything to feed these people. Oh my goodness, you know, just say, don't worry about it, I got it. I got this. You know, that to me is just amazing because the whole thing is not, he doesn't, not one peal of lightning or thunder or, you know, not, you know, no dancing angels on the hilltop, you know, nothing. Just, okay, you want something to eat, here it is. You don't see that today. That's not the way it's done today. Which leads me to believe it's not the same kind of miracle. I won't go so far as to say, I'm pretty sure that these are lying wonders, and I don't think they're real wonders. I think they're lying wonders. I think they're all fake. I've seen enough evidence that leads me to believe that. I'm not going to say that, but I don't think they're from God because they're not the same kind of miracles that God does. People do believe it. Now, another thing, and I don't want to be too critical for criticism's sake, but I want you to notice what else did not happen. Folks, this is 5,000 men. This could easily be 25,000, 30,000 people. Look through the camp. Does anybody pass around a collection plate?
Or flop on the ground and shake.
Or do anything strange except for eat fish and bread? Nobody does. They sit down and eat and leave.
And it doesn't appear like the 5,000 plus remarked about it.
No, they don't. They probably did, but nobody throws Jesus coins or writes him checks. Nobody signs over their cars, RVs, you know. There's no money that changes place. Jesus simply wanted to keep doing what he was doing. He didn't want to quit it. Now, when he quits, he quits. You know. Now, then another thing happens that's just exactly the same thing when they left. Look at verse 22. And so much is made of this that we don't really look at what exactly happens. Immediately afterward, the boat Jesus took, he compelled the disciples to get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side while he sent the crowds away. Okay, he said, all right, you know, that's all. I'm leaving. I have to leave. Got someplace to be. So he sends the crowds away. But what I also want you to know is that if you look back, Jesus took that boat by himself, didn't he? But this same boat carried the 12 apostles in it. How big of a boat was it? How tough would it be for Jesus to, or for one man, to take that boat somewhere, to propel it, to get it there? That's not going to be easy. Okay, it's probably not a shrimp boat or a tugboat, but it's a good-sized boat. Whether Jesus miraculously got it there or whether he himself, he was not a weak man. You know, physically strong, if you look at him as just a man. He got it there all by himself. And it was a big enough boat for them to all ride somewhere else. Now, he sent the crowds away, and he says goodbye to them. He's in no hurry. He's already sent the disciples on by boat. He went up to the mountain by himself to pray. Does not hurry. And when it was evening, he was there alone. But the boat was already a long distance from the land, battered by the waves, for the wind was contrary. I like the way my version puts that. The wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. The disciples saw him walking on the sea. They were terrified and said, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." All right. Much is said about this religiously, about Jesus walking on the water. Why did Jesus walk on the water?
Get on the other side.
Get to the boat. That was it.
Experience.
Yeah. You just, oh well, I'm not going to catch them, you know, don't have another boat. You start walking on the water. You get there to them. What terrifies the disciples in the dark, the wind was contrary, the waves were breaking up against the boat. They were scared anyway, and all of a sudden, folks, I would freak out if I saw a figure in the distance walking towards me when I was on a boat, walking on the water. It's a ghost. I don't know if I'd say that, but it's a ghost. Well, they cried out in fear, and Jesus said, it's me. Don't be afraid. And Peter, the impetuous Peter, says in verse 28, Peter responded and said to him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." And Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came towards Jesus. But seeing the wind, he became frightened. And when he began to sink, he cried out, saying, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reached out his hand and took hold of him and said to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got in the boat, the wind stopped. And those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "You are truly God's Son." And that verse 33, and those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "You are truly God's Son." He says the disciples got in. It says the disciples got in the boat. This sounds like this was more than the 12 to me. So the boat was pretty good size, if that's true. Now, Peter wanted in on it. "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." What did Peter want to do? I know walk on the water, but what was he actually asking to do? He was asking to do what Jesus was doing. After all, wouldn't it be kind of cool if I could do what Jesus does? What was Peter occupationally? He was a fisherman. Wouldn't this be a handy thing to do? But above that, look at what Jesus can do, and the crowds follow him. I want to be able to do what he does. So he gets out of the boat, he walks on the water, and was walking towards Jesus. But then he took his eyes off Jesus. There's a lot of sermons to be made about this, and I don't want to ruin one of those. I want to preach later. But took his eyes off Jesus and sunk. And Jesus reached out his hand to hold him. Why'd you doubt? You have little faith. And oddly enough, when they got into the boat, the wind stopped. That was it. And those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "You are truly God's Son." we know, the reason I said what I said before is, we know from what happened in Acts 1 that there were more than just the apostles that followed around with Jesus. A guy, they found two that were still around, that had been around since the beginning. And that was Matthias, and what was the other guy's name? Bar Joseph or something in Acts chapter 1. So we know there were other people that followed around with Jesus except the 12 apostles. So they who were in the boat, or those who were in the boat, said, "You are truly God's son." Now, when Jesus had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent word into all the surrounding region and brought to him all who were sick. And they pleaded with him that they might just touch the border of his cloak, and all who touched it were cured. Again, no big deal, no big show, no waving of hands, no thunder, no lightning, no anything. Jesus walks by, people reach out and touches, I think the King James Bible says the hem of his garment, the border of his clothes, just the bottom of his clothes. Okay? And that was it. They were cured. That was the end of it. Probably a lot of these people didn't even realize it when it happened. You know, the people around them didn't even realize when it happened. Jesus just walks through. Something else is going to happen just similar to this in the book of Acts. Peter is going to be walking by, and when his shadow touches someone who's sick, they're healed. You know, this is not, and I don't want to say it this way, but this is the best way I have to say it. This is not a big deal. At least it isn't to Jesus. It just happens. Jesus heals people the same way I brush my teeth. You know? Jesus heals people the same way that I put the ottoman out of my recliner. Or I change the channel on the television. Jesus raises people from the dead with just as much energy and just as much thought. Doesn't require much energy on his behalf at all. This is just naturally what happens. There is a passage that we're going to talk about that happened to Elijah. When Elijah was hiding, he hid in a cave. And the first thing that came was a wind. He was looking at the cave, and a wind came, and it broke the rocks. It was a strong wind. And then an earthquake, so that the mountain shook. And then a fire that actually burnt the rocks. But after each of those things, it says, but God was not in the wind. But God was not in the earthquake. But God was not in the fire. God then speaks to Elijah in a small, still voice. Maybe you would say, well, why is that a big deal? It's a big deal because all three of these horrible things happen. These disastrous things happen. Because why? Because that's just what happens when God walks by. That's just what happens when God walks by. God came to Elijah, and on his way, the Creator passed over the creation, and that happened. When Jesus died, the ground shook. Darkness fell upon the face of the land. The veil of the temple was torn in two, and the dead walked out of the tombs. Did God do that? No. because God could not look upon the scene. That's what happens when you crucify the Son of God. That's just a natural thing that occurs. In this case, when the Son of God walks in your midst, and with faith you touch the hem of his garment, you're fixed. You're healed. That's just what happens. It is almost a thoughtless thing. And I don't mean thoughtless in a way, but something that Jesus doesn't even have to think about. Something that God doesn't even think about. That's just naturally what happens. The teaching that Jesus does is what he seems to put a lot of thought and a lot of effort and a lot of energy into. The miracles are just something that's done as a sideline. You know? Something he just does. Oh, of course, go ahead. You know, I was teaching today, and while I was teaching, I just happened to remember this because I got on to a kid later about it, but I picked up, while I was teaching, I was walking through the classroom, picked up a candy wrapper and threw it in the trash. I didn't stop teaching. I didn't stop anything. I can't stand kids to do that because it brings rats out in our trailer out there, so I got on to a kid, that's why I remember it. Folks, that was a thoughtless thing. You know, I didn't even think about it. I just kept going about Martin Luther and the 95 Thesis and stuff and getting the kids ready to their assignment today. I just picked it up and threw it away. I didn't think about it. That's how Jesus raises the dead. That's how Jesus heals the sick. That's how he feeds the 5,000 or 30,000 even, it could be. Oh, okay. Here. It is almost as if Jesus is very just quickly taking away any impediment that anyone would have to hearing and learning what he has to say. That's the most important thing to him, is the teaching that he does to these people. He does put some thought into it. He does put a lot of effort into it seems to me. He does work at it very, very, at least while he's doing it. But these miracles, he's pretty casual about it. I wish I'd said that at the beginning, because that's kind of what describes it. He's pretty casual about the whole thing. I mean, he walks by, people touch the border of his clothes. You know, how many times when you walk in a crowd do people touch your clothing?
Yeah, it's just like the woman with the issue of blood
Yeah.
touched the hem of his garment, she was healed, and she'd been sick for what, about 12 years?
And he didn't even know what happened.
No,
Nothing happened.
but he knew some
No.
kind of
He knew something
power.
had happened.
Yeah, it had happened.
And it's just casual about the whole thing. Now, he is very, very uncasual about his teaching. I mean, he's a master teacher.
Amen.
He really is. I mean, the way that he does it makes the most complicated biblical principle so easy to understand. Even us living in a different culture, it's the reason why the Bible is so wonderful, because it doesn't take much for us to understand either by reading about it. People make a lot of these Jesus' teaching way more complicated than it actually is. But this is what people want to do. They want to take these miracles today, so-called miracles, I'll say, and make them such a big blowout. That's what the guy from Mississippi that was preaching in Arkansas that I knew real well. He said in the pulpit one time, can you imagine the Apostle Paul calling up the Apostle Peter and said, let's go down to Thessalonica and let's just have a big blowout. You know, gather people together and do all these things. That never happened. None of the miracles you see in the Bible are a big showy thing. None of them. They just are matter of fact and casually done by the people that can do them. That's probably all I need to say tonight, because I think I'm turning around and saying the same things I would have said. Y'all have any comments about this? Wow.
I heard somebody say something about the miracles happen from Jesus especially. like, you go to the wall and turn on the light, you expect it to come on with everything in you. If it doesn't, you're surprised
Mhm.
and shocked and disoriented, but if that really is how we're supposed to
I wish I could use
believe,
that as illustration, yeah. That's actually pretty cool. Um,
but it really was.
Mhm.
If you don't, I don't think a thing of it. Flip it and never give it a thought.
Small story. Monday I came in to school. I went there first, went into my classroom, my trailer, flipped the switch, nothing happened. Part of the school is on Canucci, part of it is on Georgia Power, the part that was on Canucci was out. My part is on Canucci. And so, not only was I surprised, I flipped out. I went and found all the principals and I said, listen, you gotta tear this place down, put up school. It's a great place for one, because the buses stop here twice a day, everything. They have lunch, This is a great place for a school. Tear down whatever this place is and put up school. All this teaching of children stuff, is it getting in the way of anything else? Dr. Holloway, what are you talking about? There's no power out there. One of the principals got up, said, here, you can use my spot. We got Wi-Fi here. We'll get on it right away. Before I left, the funeral was right on.
How about that?
I was ticked.
The bells went off too.
Oh, and the breaking up of the pieces left over. I am blessed with a wife that every time we go out to eat, she asks for a box. Okay? We went to Sunny Side Up today and she got a Western omelet and asked for a box.
Mhm.
Went out to the car, put it on top of the car,
And drove off with it on top of the car.
Oh, no.
drove off, and all of a sudden I said, Donna, there went your omelet, because I saw it in the rearview mirror. Saw it splat. There was all these people honking at me because they saw it up there and I didn't. They were gonna wait while I went and got it, but it went right in the end. I said, I'll give something else on my own. Should not, don't worry about it, not at all. But
That's
the
my
pieces
girl.
left over, they're still on the end probably.
The girl from Brunswick used to drive from Brunswick to Savannah to work at St. Joseph.
Mhm.
And she came in one morning all stressed out. She had put her shoes on top of her car and forgot them.
I left my cell phone up there one time, on
Why
top
did
of my
it do?
car. It went out in the middle of 280 and bang, it thinks, so I had to do a U-turn, go back around. Luckily it hit in the middle of the road where the line is. I said, I've got all insurance. There wasn't a thing in the world wrong with that phone.
But I'll tell you what happened to me one
I
time.
mean, the only thing was, there was a message all over the front of the screen when I got there. It said, we are testing a new feature in Samsung. Have you been in an accident? Have you been in a collision?
I was going on a trip one time to Nashville, Tennessee, and some people at the church on Middle Ground Road were giving me directions and how to get there. That's before we had all this, stuff in the car that you could program in and go. So I laid my cell phone up on the hood of the car.
Mhm.
It was on the right-hand side, and I was driving down the right-hand side of Middle Ground Road. Well, after I got home, I thought, where's my cell phone? And I thought, oh my. I said, it fell off on Middle Ground Road. So I jumped with me and the kids, jumped back in the car, and I run over there and look for it. And I knew about maybe where it had fallen off. We shined the light, run the grass and everything, we couldn't find it. Next day, this lady on Middle Ground Road called me because I think I had put my wallet up there too, and it was gone. We couldn't find the wallet or the phone. And so this lady on Middle Ground Road had her German Shepherd dog had come along and found it, and he had carried it up on the porch.
It's wonderful.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
And it wasn't very showy
Yeah,
either.
I wasn't very sure.
What's your invitation song?
170.
170. And in a moment, we'll be singing number 170. And if you do stand in need, either here or listening at home, to respond to the Lord's invitation, we come and say, we stand and as we sing.
Hear the sweet voice of Jesus say, come unto me, I am the way,
Hearken the loving call, obey. Come, for he loves you so. Only a step, only a step. Come, for he bled for you and died. He's the same loving Savior yet. Jesus the crucified. Almighty God and Father of all, we thank you for the blessings that have come our way this day. We ask, Heavenly Father, that you'll be with us as we leave this place and dismiss us, but never from thy presence. We ask, Father, that you'll bring your hand of tender mercy upon those who have lost loved ones, those who are sick, those who are going through tough times. Continue to care for each and every one of us. Please forgive us when we stumble. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we got, as of Sunday, 2 weeks till Super Sunday. We're ready to bring stuff again. I've still got some extra hot chili back there in the freezer if anybody would like to take it home with them. And I was going to tell you not to do this, but now I really don't care. If you want to fool somebody and give them some of that instead and watch them run. A couple people liked it. Calvin liked it.
Oh, yeah, very much.
It's in the freezer.
Uh-huh.
I don't get something on
Okay, it's in the freezer where we keep the ice on the bottom in Ziploc bags.
it. Okay.
Take it home, just eat it.
Have some Ziploc chili.
But it is fiery hot. It's,
Devil's
Flaming.
blood.
It's flaming.
But you can cool that down with milk. I used to make it really hot, but fed my babies. I just give them milk. Milk will cut the heat.
yeah, I usually drink the milk right afterwards.
Yeah.
But I put in
But
there,
if you put it in, a kid can drink it.
I made it, instead of tomato juice, I used Bloody Mary mix, hot and spicy.
Okay.
And then instead of hamburger meat, I browned pan sausage, Italian sausage that was hot and spicy.
Okay.
And then I put a bunch of onions, so I had a bunch of onions put in. And then I went to a Mexican grocery store and got a can of mixed hot peppers, and they were diced and stuff. Then I got a can of whole habaneros
Oh,
and a can of chipotle.
Okay. Habaneros.
Simmered it all night long. I could not find ghost chilies or reapers, but
I would have died before I even made it home. I'd have been out in the yard.
it smelled good though.
But if y'all hear of a fire coming from my direction, you'll know what it
Yeah.
is.
It smelled
I breathe
wonderful.
breath on the
Yeah.
Our whole house smelled like that.
Well, generally, because it suits to habaneros and all of those lose a great deal.
Yeah.
Their heat.
We simmered it all night long and then
And I
all next
tasted
day.
it.
But I mean, when you store it the next day.
I was like-
Yeah.
it'll be,
Now it's been frozen,
Smash
so-
on it.
may or may not.
Yeah, but I filled up a few Ziploc bags because Paula said she wanted to try it. And they were here and a couple other people. And Calvin,
Yeah.
picked him some.
He's still living. We see him today. He's still living.
So you can eat my chili and not die.
I like hot chili.
I had to say that.
Larry was here. Larry Sheed from Statesboro Creek.
Mhm.
He ate some, but he had to fill it full of sour cream.
Who is that guy that came here and he sat here or here a couple of times? One time he led the singing.
Let's sing it.
Who was that guy? I thought he was gonna start coming, but he hasn't been.
No, he went back to Mississippi.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
he's
that's
from
right.
somewhere
Yeah,
else.
he had to go back.
Yeah.
He told me why, and I can't remember. It was a while back. I remember he talking about that.
Yeah.
Anything else we can talk about?
Just don't talk about me.
Well, we only do that one. All right, folks, we'll see you Sunday, if not before. If you need anything, give us a call. If we're home.
Yeah, Barry said tell you, I mean, he'll need a little training, but if you wanted him to speak to you sometime, you wanted a break, he would be willing to try it.
Have it the rest of the year if you want.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
because
good to know.
he's got a lot of, good background knowledge and everything
Well,
like that.
You know,
He said he'd give it a whirl.
we'll probably have to go back to Atlanta for 2 months longer. So
Okay.
that may have to happen. You know. find that outline.
Okay, like Gilligan's Island.
Good,
I'll see
that
how
was
it-
a masterful work.
I remember.
I would love to preach that. I can't preach it here, it's already written preached, but someplace I go, they'd be shocked. That preacher, look what he can do with Gilligan's Island. You know? That, if you find it, let me know.
Okay, I
I want a
will.
copy of it. I know you
I
want
said,
to
it's
get,
gonna take, Jimmy's got 32 years worth of stuff.
it's gonna take years for you to
I
find
know it,
out.
I started to work in it a little bit today, and I said, after I got that scammer,
Mhm.
you know, it kind of unnerved me a little bit, you know, so I said, well, I had a couple of things I needed to do, because I needed to be able to get back, I tried everything I needed to get back online.
For some reason, I remember it, we were watching it online. Dad was with me, we must have been in Missouri that time, just you and I went. And I was watching, and then he said, I'm gonna center my remarks around Gilligan's Island. I thought, no, Jim, come on now.
Yeah.
And I started listening to it, I said, this is absolutely brilliant. You know, and I never would have thought of doing that. I wish I had taped it, you know, then I would need the hour, I could do it myself.
One of my favorites that you do is Four
If I
Anchors.
can, I'll.
Is what?
The Four Anchors one.
Oh, really? Oh, the 4 pillars, you mean?
Four Pillars, yeah.
He might have saved it in his computer, and so if I find it, I'll get it. Like I found something, my son that just died, he's in a good, stable church in Jacksonville, and everything, and he had wrote about, we need to get back to the scriptures, you know,
Mhm.
and everything.
I wish I had that. I'll tell you, the people here probably have forgotten it after about 2 or 3 more years. I'll probably preach it again a year if I can find it. And he did it just so conversationally and matter of factly. It was so easy to understand.
Don't cut them lights out with me in here.
He's ready, I think.
Who was helping me when I cut them out? I couldn't see.
You need anything, honey? I appreciate it.
That's the truth.
Miss Shaw.
Love you.
Love you too. That was Vicky. Bye.